Okay, so hello and welcome all in today's webinar where we'll be covering the topic on the amnesty scheme, which is introduced under foreign trade policy. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking the time out and being here today. We'll also be running a live question and answer session at the end of the webinar where you can ask your doubts related to the topic. So first, if I speak about the Cretum Advisory, it is a multidisciplinary firm wherein we have been strategizing and planting growth in businesses and startups since 2013. We provide many of the financial services, which includes the audit and assurance, valuation, fundraising, advisory and litigation in terms of taxation and customs, indirect taxation, due diligence, and CFO services. And we are a tech-driven firm where we believe to make an impact in businesses and startups through the new advancements and the changes. And these are some of the services which I have already elaborated, the audit and assurance valuation services. And first, I would like to introduce the prominent speakers of today's session. Mr. Kapil Mahani, he is the indirect tax partner with the Cretum Advisory. Mr. Kapil Mahani is a chartered accountant with the experience working across in the GST, customs, and the foreign trade domain. And he's also a global tax expert, currently leading the India and Gulf tax practices. Prior to Cretum Advisory, he was a part of EY's indirect tax practice at the very senior position. And he's frequently quoted and cited in various discussions on GST, VAT, customs, and he's also a regular speaker and, and presenter as well in India and abroad. And he is currently serving on the board of several companies as indirect taxation, as advisor and auditor, apart from that, including the compliance and automation through the robotics and automation. And he's currently leading the indirect tax practice at the Cretum Advisory. Now, the one of the associate partners we are having today in the session is Mr. Arun Khetan. He is the associate partner with the Cretum Advisory. He is a highly experienced foreign trade policy consultant who's having the experience in the customs, excise, service tax, and GST. He offers an insightful approach to identify the indirect taxes available through the foreign trade policy and effectively integrate them with the ones applicable under customs and GST. In addition to that, he also provides these advisory services on corporate structuring and supply chain management to meet the needs of his clients as well. He's currently associate partner at the Cretum Advisory. So these two prominent speakers are going to take forward this session from here onwards.
So, Ravina, I think you can run the presentation and I'll be speaking
Sure, sir.
along with Mr. Khetan. And thanks for the introduction and thanks everyone who has come forward for this webinar. And we'll try to cover as much as possible the aspects which are related to the foreign trade amnesty scheme. So, recently, this amnesty scheme, which is a one time settlement uh, for the default, which are in the export obligations, advance and EPCG license. So, as we all know that any of the amnesty scheme comes with the objective to reduce the burden of the litigations and the files which are pending either at the adjudication stage or on account of non-compliance by the SSE. So, and this is one of the similar scheme which has come, wherein the advantage of this scheme is that any person who are having the advanced license and the EPCG license and have taken these advanced license and EPCG license up to a certain period, which we'll discuss later on, and they are not able to fulfill their export obligation, all those exporters can avail the benefit of this scheme, wherein they will get the advantage of waiver of the interest, which we'll discuss, and also regularization of their exports with the redemption of the licenses. So this scheme has come with an objective and specific to only two cases, wherein the one case is with regard to advanced license and the second case is with regard to EPCG. since this discussion and webinar is, so I do not want to go to a very basic point of what is advanced license and what is EPCG, but for the betterment of the audience and for the clarity, just to give the insight that advanced license are being procured by any assessee to get the raw material imported without paying the custom duty, which can be a basic custom duty and the additional duties which are associated with the customs. Earlier, before the introduction of the GST, it was CVD and SAD. And after the introduction of GST, it is IGST. So now this scheme has come. So, Ravina, can you come to the second slide? Next slide. So this scheme has come under the foreign trade policy, wherein if the exporter who was unable to meet their export obligation under the EPCG license, or similarly who are not able to meet their export obligations under the advance authorization, and since they were not able to meet that obligation, so then they need to get, because they are not able to either fulfill their export obligation. अगर एक assessee ने advance license procure किया है, so then they need to get a certain percentage of exports done of the duty saved amount. And in that scenario, if they are not fulfilling it, then they need to pay the duty which was saved at the time of import along with interest, because interest is applicable. It is as if that you were supposed to pay that duty at the time of that incidence when you imported that raw material or capital goods under the license. And now, since you are unable to meet the export obligation, so you are fulfilling it by paying the duty along with interest. So the third point which is written here is that exporters who are burdened up with high custom duty and interest costs associated with the pending default in export obligations, so they are the ones who are the best beneficiary of this amnesty scheme. This slide is particularly covering the aspect of to all those cases jahan pe this amnesty scheme will not be applicable. The first is
Kapil, can I take?
yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
you can.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining this webinar on the amnesty scheme. This is particularly very important, especially for those people who have been saddled with, they have some old obligations under EPCG and advance, as Kapil said, and it is specifically for them. So if we look here that who is not eligible for amnesty scheme, so the advance authorizations that were issued after 1/4/2015, that is in the 1520 foreign trade policy, they are not eligible. Only the advanced licenses and EPCG which were issued before 1st April 15, that is eligible. Similarly, if the advance authorizations and EPCG that were issued in the older policy 914, even 49, but their export obligation period should be beyond 12th August 2013, original or extended, only those licenses shall be eligible. So if there is any license which is where the obligation period is up to 12th August 2013 only, that will not be eligible. Let's say आपका कोई 2004-5 का लाइसेंस है, 5-6 का लाइसेंस है और उसका export obligation period it is not beyond 12th August, so that will not be eligible. Similarly, we have a lot of schemes under a foreign trade policy. The export oriented unit, export hardware technology park, STP scheme, BTP scheme, SEZ is there. If there is any default under these schemes, that is not covered. Similarly, duty drawback, ROTTEP, ROSTEL, let's say you exported, you got the drawback, but the money was not realized, so you have to pay back to the government. उसमें कोई default है, that is not covered. Similarly, MEIS, SEIS, कोई default है, that is not covered. Gem and jewelry की schemes हैं, DFIA scheme है, that is not covered. Deemed exports, deemed exports which does not involve advance authorization in EPCG, that is not covered. And of course, one clause which is very important clause, that if you are being investigated for fraud or misdeclaration regarding anything, then you are not eligible for this scheme. So the coverage of this scheme, which is very important to understand, as we have already established, is only for advance authorization and EPCG schemes, and it does not cover defaults under any other scheme. Now the specific coverage is all types of authorizations issued under these schemes issued till 31/3/2015. So आपका कोई भी IGST वाला लाइसेंस या 15/1/4/15 से जुलाई 17 तक नॉर्मल कस्टम ड्यूटी वाला लाइसेंस भी है, वो इसमें कवर नहीं होगा. सो आज 2015 से 2023 पिछले 8 साल में जो आपके लाइसेंस इशू हुए हैं वो आपके कवर्ड नहीं है इस एमनेस्टी में. So you got to be very clear about this thing. The other part is, if you have any old obligations, I think advance में तो नहीं होंगी, maybe in EPCG there might be old licenses which were having a validity of 8 year at that point of time, वो फिर भी किसी के pending हो सकते हैं. Even in that cases, the export obligation period should be beyond 12th August 2013. Okay, so two main clauses, that the licenses should be issued in the 914 policy till 31/3/2015, and if they are from the old policy, then the export obligation period should be beyond 12th August 2013. And as we see further, that even if your case has been adjudicated or is under appeal, where we can have a penalty of up to 500%, even those cases have been covered under this amnesty scheme. Kapil, you want to say something?
So now I think what is more important is,
Yeah,
Mr. Khetan, and I would like to add on this aspect as well, that the cases wherein specifically the extension has been sought in the export obligation under the old scheme, and that extension was sought and wherein the time period of extension either under the normal and by way of PRC committee, it is extended beyond 2013, 12th August 2013, then those cases are still covered under this. So that's one of the important aspect. And secondly, if there is a point which also require a clarity, that if your case has been adjudicated or pending for adjudication and appeal has not been filed. So let's suppose a case wherein any investigation has come and something in terms of advanced license or in terms of EPCG license and some adjudication is pending, whether that will be covered under that process or what all will be the diameter of the adjudication. That is one of the aspect which is yet to be discussed by way of clarity.
Adjudication in a normal scenario, normal case, where it is not because of any fraud or any misrepresentation, then those cases will be covered, where the original or extended EO period is beyond 12th August 2013. Okay, so maybe you go to PRC, you get more extensions from the PRC, and the extended period is beyond 12th August 2013, those cases will be covered. And if adjudication is in normal course, then the cases are covered.
So I've just retweeted that aspect for the betterment of the audience, so that if any clarity is required on this aspect. So we will cover this in our question answer session.
Right.
So coming to the next slide. So under this amnesty scheme, all the pending cases of the default in meeting the export obligations can be regularized by exporter on payment. So now how to avail the benefit under this scheme and what all you need to pay. Now we are discussing on that aspect. So one thing which is that you need to, so there is no waiver on the point of view of the duties which were required to be paid as if you imported at which were applicable at the time when you imported that raw material. So let's suppose you imported a raw material in the month of March 2015. Then at that point of time, the custom duty and the BCD and the CVD and SAD, which were applicable on those products, that duty has to be calculated at that time, and now that has to be paid. So that is the one, and there is no waiver on the duty point. Second, with regard to the interest, point of view, the duty calculation on the basic custom duty. So what has come as a circular and clarity is on the basic custom duty, they have given a capping of interest, which is up to 100% of the duty amount. So let's suppose if the total duty amount is 350 and the interest amount which is coming is approximately 420, which is more than the duty amount, then the capping of duty amount will be till the 350, which is the tax amount. And over and above to that, then that will be considered as a waiver under the amnesty scheme, including the interest waiver on the additional custom duty and special additional duty, which was applicable. That interest waiver is also there under this amnesty scheme. So we will discuss with by way of illustration. So coming to the next slide.
Yeah, so this condition for availment of amnesty scheme, one point we discussed that if your case is under investigation for fraud, misdeclaration, unauthorized diversion of material, then of course such cases will not be covered, of course. Now, neither the SENVAT credit nor refund under any provision of law of any amount shall be allowed on duties paid under amnesty scheme. So you cannot go back that that I paid this much amount of custom duty and now I want to take the credit of this thing. That is not allowed. You have to give a specific declaration regarding this when we apply for the amnesty scheme. That undertaking has to be given that you will not file application for SENVAT credit or refund under any scheme before any authority or before any court. So it's basically all the custom duties plus 100% of basic custom duty is your cost. That is the cost that you have to pay, and you cannot go back to anyone for the refund or credit of same. Uh, yeah, the last thing is that you have to pay the custom duty along with the applicable interest in full. Then case would be eligible for coverage. So that's okay. We can move to the next slide. Okay. Kapil, this you can explain better.
So if we paid on self-assessment basis or demand by the DGFT, though the applicable duties which are applicable at any point of time is a basic custom duty, SAD and CVD, and including the penal interest of 15% of the basic custom duty, penal interest of 15% on additional custom duty, and again on CVD and SAD.
Special additional duty, sorry.
In if the case is adjudication and addition, the penalty of up to 5% of the value of the goods and services can be imposed under the foreign trade policy.
Kapil, this is very important that up to 5 times of the value of goods, not the duty saved. Up to that, the DGFT has power to impose penalty 5x penalty of the CIF value of goods. So if CIF is 1000 and the duties saved is 300, let's say 30%, then they can impose a penalty of up to 5,000 rupees. So, I mean, in relation to the duty amount, that is up to almost like 20 times. Okay, but normally they don't do that, but that is the power that they have under FTDR Act. That is under the normal course. Now we can have a look at how much will we have to pay under amnesty scheme in the next slide.
So now,
Yeah, Kapil, please continue.
so now with this scheme, in terms of the amnesty scheme, in spite of paying that amount, so what you need to only pay is with regard to the three duties which we have discussed, which was applicable and due and saved at the time when the import was technically done, and along with it the 15% of the interest amount on the basic custom duty, and which is also capped up to 100%. So even if the case is adjudication, amnesty can be opted. So that's what we are always saying on this point.
Normally, because it is applicable only for licenses before 2015, and if the obligation default is 6-7 year old, then you can assume that 100% capping would be hit normally. But of course, case by case study can be done. Yeah. So next slide, please. Okay. So here we have taken a case illustration where the export obligation default period is 9 years, and let's say where the entire export obligation could not be fulfilled. So if you see, the value of exempted goods about rupees 1000, and duty we have taken at 30%, and out of that we have taken 200 rupees as the additional customs duty and special additional duty, taking the basic customs duty at around 10%, that is rupees 100. So interest due for 9 years capped at 100% of BCD under amnesty is rupees 100. And if it was a normal scenario, it is at 15% on all duties of customs. That is 15% at 9 for 9 years is 135%, which is 405 rupees. So if you see the final row G, under the amnesty scheme, you have to pay 300 plus 100 is equal to 400, while under the normal scenario, you would have to pay 705, which is a substantial saving uh, under the amnesty scheme. Yeah. Next slide, please. This is well, if there's a partial shortfall in export obligation fulfillment, first have to calculate the whole thing, that how much shortfall is there. Here we have taken, let's say, 40% shortfall is there. Then if goods imported were rupees 5,000, uh, then the shortfall is on 2,000 rupees worth of goods. And on that basis, we've done the calculation where the duty is 600 rupees. So 600 plus the interest of custom duty is 200 rupees, which has to be paid. So total of 800 rupees have to be paid. Exempted duties on 2000 plus column G, which is 200 rupees. Total outgo will be 800 rupees in this case, case of partial short in export obligation.
So that's the
Yeah.
typically a model wherein you have out of the 100% you have fulfilled the export obligation of 60%. Then only on the 40% you need to compute your duties which you saved at that point of time and compute the interest and obligation accordingly. That is always subjective because there might be a cases wherein instead of entire being not fulfilled, some of the part of the export obligation not fulfilled, and this is one of the best case studies which is always applicable in terms of the practical wherein assessee has not fulfilled his obligation. Uh, and next slide.
Yes, this is a procedure which was specified recently on 17th April for applying for the amnesty scheme. So some of you who might be aware of the DGFT navigation, under the services, we go under the advanced authorization or EPCG tab, where we apply for closure of advance authorization or closure of EPCG. So when we go there on the first page, we have to check this amnesty scheme for one-time settlement of default in export obligation, and accordingly the system will auto calculate the figure, and then the application will be submitted online. Next page, please. So when the application is submitted online, RA shall examine and confirm the shortfall. Before this circular came, in the initial notice, there was a confusion that you pay the duty upfront to the department, and that way, if you have 100% shortfall in export obligation, then you can pay the duty upfront. But this circular, kind of clarified it, that the RLA shall examine and confirm the shortfall to the letter. They will assess it. And then, of course, you have to go back to the customs authority and pay the duty, and then respond to that letter and deposit it in the RLA. And if the RLA is satisfied, they will consider regularizing your export under this scheme and give you an export obligation discharge certificate. The dates, Kapil, the dates are important.
So I think the dates again are very important because you should know your sunset date. So in this, the sunset date for the amnesty scheme is 30th of June, by which you need to file your application under the portal. And once that get accepted, then you need to pay your duties by 30th of September 2023. So in fact, in one of the instance now, after this webinar, if you are a qualified chartered accountant or you are a finance person of a company, what you need to see in your case is, if you need to summarize, you need to first see whether you have an advanced license or EPCG license. If yes, then you need to see whether those licenses are being issued before 2015 or after 2015. If they are issued before 2015, then you need to see your case might cover, because अभी तक आपने उसको export obligation पूरा नहीं किया हुआ, तभी आपका advance license redeem नहीं हुआ. So in that scenario, you need to take the advantage and see if you will go in a regular scheme versus this scheme, what is the advantage you have. So take that advantage and then file the application and get that waiver of amnesty scheme. But it is very important, if your case is pending in adjudication and there was some recovery which happened, which is one of the case, and you already paid the duty and the interest amount which was applicable on account of default in the export obligation, then in those cases you paid the duty and interest amount 100% to protect the revenue. In that scenario, this scheme is not applicable. So one of the issue which came to us is we paid under protest, and whether this scheme is applicable. If we have paid any duty under protest subject to the pending adjudication, then do I am still eligible for this scheme? So illustration को थोड़ा डिटेल में समझते हैं. अगर किसी केस में हमने एडवांस लाइसेंस के ऊपर जो हमने नॉन फुलफिलमेंट की वजह से कुछ ड्यूटी और इंटरेस्ट बनता था, और उस ड्यूटी और इंटरेस्ट को हमने अंडर प्रोटेस्ट पे कर दिया बिफोर फाइलिंग द अपील, then although my appeal is pending, although my tax is being paid under protest, and if I'll get the matter adjudicated, I may win or may not. But in that scenario, do I am still eligible for it? So the answer to this aspect is no, because the condition which has been prescribed is, if you have paid the entire duty and interest, then this scheme will not be applicable to you. And this is not with regard to this scheme only. And since we are doing many amnesty scheme of not only to this aspect, but to other laws as well. And we have seen a consistent that because amnesty scheme is coming to not give anything in return once somebody has already deposited. So they want to close the litigation rather than giving it the refunds on account of closure of litigation. So that's the simple policy. Next slide.
Next slide. Okay, so if your cases are under appeal or adjudication, then there's a small process for that which has been specified. So if your case has been adjudicated or pending for adjudication and appeal has not been filed, so once you get your advanced license or EPCG closed under the amnesty scheme, then a copy of EODC shall be provided uh, by the RLA to the adjudicating authority. That can be given to the adjudicating authority that we have availed this amnesty scheme. And there may be cases where the appeal has been filed. Then that letter has to be given to the appellate authority, and after the submission of such letter to the appellate authority, they will decide upon the closure of such case, and then they will intimate the appellant as well as the RLA. So it is very clear as to how things have to go about, and once you file for amnesty, then the due process has to be followed to get back your file from the appellate authority, or if it is under adjudication.
Done. I think.
Okay, this is documentation. Okay, uh, we were talking about if there is a partial export obligation has been fulfilled by the exporter, and only, let's say, we had an illustration where 60% of the fulfillment of export obligation was done. In that case, these are some of the documents which are required under the foreign trade policy. Original authorization with debit sheets, shipping bill, GST invoices, EBRCs, EWA bills, PSC, bill of entry, customs ledger. These are some documents which, when we file for the amnesty scheme, then we will present them with all the documents and data that, hey, we have done 60% of your exports, so kindly levy duty and interest only on 40%. So there's a way of making the whole calculation, and these are some of the documents which we just, uh, put out here, so that these are required documents for assessing the obligation that has been fulfilled by the exporter. Yeah. Uh,
Coming to the next slide.
Next. Yeah, some 2-3 questions are here. Okay, as Kapil said, maybe in March, just to close your books, maybe you paid all the custom duty with interest. And can you opt for this scheme now? So the answer is no. You cannot opt for this scheme for any case where the custom duty and interest payment has been done already. Okay. And who should opt for this amnesty scheme? Of course, the license holders before issued before April 15, who are saddled with a lot of interest and backlog of interest and duty payment. They can, and if their case, let's say some of the cases we have seen that such cases which are old, they're normally put up in the policy relaxation committee of DGFT for waiver of export obligation because of XYZ reason. So if you think that PRC will not give you a waiver of the obligation, and ultimately you have to pay the custom duties and interest, then this is the right time, for you to avail this amnesty scheme. And composition fees, yes. Is composition fees for export obligation waived under this amnesty scheme? No, this scheme is only about default in export obligation. The extension of export obligation is another process, and composition fees is payable to DGFT with respect to that. Even in cases where exporters may want some extensions in export obligations and composition fees may be payable. So this amnesty scheme does not exempt any composition fees which is payable on the extension, EU extension. Uh,
Yes, I think in case if I think from our point of view the webinar has been done, and to the extent the questions which anyone uh, could have asked, we have already covered that aspect. In case if still somebody has a question, then they can put on our question on that chat option, or else they can put their questions on our email. If you can come on the last slide, so that anyone can share the questions on that email ID. Uh, can you present the last screen? So either anyone can mail on info@Cretum Advisory, uh, or reach out to the numbers, and we will be happy to assist you in terms of the replies to the question which anyone has, whether my scheme, whether my advanced license will be available or not. Thank you, Mr. Khetan ji, and thank you the entire management of Cretum Advisory for organizing this.
Thank you, Kapil, for inviting. And I hope this session has been helpful. And are there any questions? No.
So I think, and in fact, during the slides, I've already discussed what are the questions which has come on my personal WhatsApp as well. So I've
Okay.
already covered that aspect. When somebody asked that if I've already paid the taxes,
Okay.
Ankit Jeswani has asked a question. But EPCG, if EO is fulfilled for EPCG licenses, can we opt for this scheme?
Uh, Ankit, EPCG EO fulfillment is not just the export obligation fulfillment, but also the full other conditions where you have to also complete the average export obligation. So, if the average export obligation and EO has been fulfilled, then of course there is no need for amnesty scheme. But I am assuming that there is a default in average export or some EO, then there are two options. Either if there is a default in average export obligation, then the EO default will be considered as 100%. But if average export has been completed, but the main export obligation is not fully completed, then the case will be covered under partial export obligation default. Uh, Then if there is no default in average obligation, then it will be a partial export obligation default, and which can be assessed on the basis of documents, right? And of course, the license should be issued before 1/4/2015.
So in crux, what you are trying to say is that it will be covered under the partial condition of export obligation fulfillment.
Exactly. Because he's saying that average export obligation has been fulfilled, then the evaluation has to be done that how much export obligation has been fulfilled and how much is still remains to be fulfilled, or what is the default.
So and another question come, if anybody wants to have for last 2-3 years, can it be possible? So the answer to is, if your advanced license is issued in last 2-3 years, then that is not covered under this amnesty scheme, because any license which issued before 2015 is only covered under this amnesty scheme.
So redemption of BG is pending, then you have to go to customs. That is not a DGFT issue.
Done.
Yeah.
I think all questions are covered, and no. Thank
Great.
you, everyone.
Thank you, Kapil. And have a good day, everyone. Thank you for
Done.
joining. Right. Thank
Okay.
you.